Last three sessions we have covered retail analytics, and today we introduce this term on CRM and customer lifetime value, CLTV or CLV as we very often call it. So this is the last module we are doing of the course, and the last class, which is scheduled on Wednesday, is more of a course wrap up that we will be doing. So with this we will be finishing off the entire module that we have, right? So over to you, Tuhin, to take it forward.
Sure. Very good morning, guys. Apparently, CLV is very easy. If you just Google it, you will find hundreds of definitions, all written to the simple, and a couple of formulas also pretty simple. So if I take that route, this class would be over in 2 minutes, right? No big deal. And the class is not required. Not only in 2 minutes. The class is not required for the simple reason you can yourself understand what it is. Big deal. Pretty simple concept. Fortunately, we have progressed a lot than what is available on the internet, what is available on Google, what is available, or how you used to calculate some 10 years back, 15 years back, 20 years back. So things have changed drastically. Things have evolved in leaps and bounds. So what you will find in Google, I have kept it in the first couple of slides. So typically, I have segregated this into three sections. The class today. One is a traditional construct. What is the typical CLV formula? What is readily available in all the books and sites, whatever, white papers. That's traditional construct. Then we will move again. We will appreciate this CLTV or CLV from a MLDL based solution framework. We will understand that how we can really solve the problem, really do justice to the problem from the MLDL analytics perspective. And then I shall walk you through a kind of use case, which I did for a kind of international car maker. So yeah, it was Toyota. So yeah, that's how I have segregated this into three sections. So for the traditional construct, of course, from the slide you can understand I have not prepared it. I have taken this slide and the next slide from Google only, just to show you or walk you through that. What you will find, if you have not already gone through what is there in the book or any of the internet, this is exactly what you will find in any of the book or in the internet site. It apparently is pretty simple, right? Average purchase you will take, and then you will assume that 10% customer will leave. That is 10% churn rate, and then you will divide it, and then naturally, obviously, will subtract the customer acquisition cost, and you will arrive to a kind of customer lifetime value. Pretty simple, no big deal. Even a class 4 student can do it, calculate it, no big deal. Simple division, subtraction. That's one way. There is another simple way. I have again taken this one from Google just to show you how simplistic things were and how grossly wrong, not only simplistic, grossly wrong it was when we used to do it in this way. Again, a pretty simple thing like cost of acquisition, and then the gross margin they used to calculate, say, for instance, 40%, and then 40% of 500 is $200. Annual support cost is 25, so 200, and then you subtract this annual support cost. And then what you will do is that 4 into, if it is a kind of length of relationship for 4 years, you multiply 4 into 125, and then you minus this 100, and then arrive to a 600 CLV. So these things are pretty simple. So, but whatever it is, but it is not being used. So this kind of dashboards we used to have 15 years back, 20 years back. Of course, this looked very decent, but then the calculations behind it, as I've shown you, were pretty inaccurate. So these things don't work these days. Now the question is that why it doesn't work, and a lot of questions let me throw first before I give you the solution, or I don't want to spoon feed the solution. Let me ask the questions and you throw the solution to me, rather, instead of me giving you the solution. So what kind of problems do you find here? What kind of problems do you find here? If you take this route, any problem you are finding? What's the problem? Guys, all of you feel free to unmute yourself as long as there is no background noise and then interact with me.
So this looks very static in nature.
True, true. This looks very static, number one. What else? Dive deep further. This looks very static, is very still high level. From 10,000 feet, come down to 3,000 feet. What else?
So how did they like come up to this 10% churn rate? So
Exactly so. Exactly so. That's a good catch. That's a good catch. So you cannot just have something like thump. And more importantly, churn itself, as you rightly mentioned, the static word. Churn itself is not static. 10% is not static. Everything changes so rapidly. Number one, the most important aspect is that there is no predictive angle to it. It is all historical, right? That you can understand, right? So average purchase, this churn rate, so everything is historical. There is no futuristic angle to it. So then you are not doing justice to this construct of customer lifetime value. So that's the whole problem. I hope I'm clear, right?
yes, sir. Yes.
So can we say that the earlier model was more descriptive in nature and was not predictive in nature?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's more descriptive. Is still descriptive the way we use the word descriptive analytics. Yeah, kind of historic plus present, but this is more of a historic part. There is nothing futuristic about it. How much revenue a customer will going to give to me? Suppose if I ask this question, let's look at this construct, a projected amount of a revenue. This has got nothing to do with projection, right? This is very standard. Keeping all the things will constant. This doesn't happen in reality. This doesn't happen, and this is too simplistic. You are not capturing the nuances of consumer behavior here. By the way, what I'm going to give you now as a solution framework, which is MLDL based, don't think that that is the industry based solution. There is no one solution to the industry. That's why, as I was saying to you the other day, there is a difference between a cook and a chef that you all know, right? A cook will just follow a recipe, and a chef can always create his own recipe, his or her own recipe, and then mesmerize, and then by that creates a brand of the chef. Same thing for data scientist. So what the solution framework I'm going to show it to you now, or even in the use case, they are all different solution frameworks. They are all created by me. Don't think that that is the standard one. I shall follow that one. Nothing like that. You can always come out with your own. There is nothing sacrosanct about it, that it cannot be changed. Absolutely your call. As long as you can do justice to the business problem given to you, you can always create a solution framework. I think the very important thing here, before I show you my solution framework and walk you through the steps, a very important thing is that being a student of analytics, you must start developing your solution architecture, because that's what the company's value, organization's value, and that's one of the very few spaces left now where you can show your creativity. Why very few spaces left? As I was discussing the other day, most of the things are automated. Most of the things, be it the data cleaning part or the model development part, model comparison, model validation, even model deployment for that matter, things are pretty automated, right? So if not 100%, but to a large extent, things can be automated or are automated. But what cannot be automated is developing a solution architecture. So I shall show you a couple of architecture today, solution architecture. Start learning how to develop a solution architecture, and then start developing your architecture. That's where your unique perspective will come, and that's what is been deeply valued in industry. I can develop a model is good, but that's not a kind of uniqueness. That's not something you are the only one who can do. But your solution framework, if that is better, your solution design, solution architecture, if that's better than the rest of the gang, then yeah, it will be valued.
But Tuhin, if I'm trying to, work for a certain organization, and if I create a proprietary kind of a tool for them, wouldn't there be some set of a room to, do something of my own?
Well, I think I'm not clear. I couldn't communicate myself clearly. I think I have not mentioned anything about tool at this moment. Tool will come at a much later stage. Rather, I would say tool doesn't matter. Tool doesn't matter. What
No,
really matters?
let me, kind of say, for example, there's an organization which is trying to, look at an M&A, merger and acquisition, and it's trying to, get its brand valuated. There's a brand valuation that it needs to do.
Right.
So there are several processes through which you can, create a measure of brand valuation, and I go back and do my own.
Correct.
So are you kind of saying that this is not what we're talking about, but we're talking about a larger context here, or I mean, maybe
No,
somewhere.
your example was pretty close to what I'm trying to say. So my point is that, and I shall clarify it with a couple of examples, or let me do it in this way, without speaking abstract, that with an example. Let me take a use case, and then that would be easier for you. First, let me take this use case, and it would be easier for you to understand that how I developed a solution framework, and then again, as I mentioned, not sacrosanct. And why I'm sharing this thing, this was CLTV was a kind of integral part. So that's the beauty of developing a solution framework. So this was again for a kind of, as I told you, for a leading auto manufacturer. They wanted, or this can be utilized for any. I utilize it not only for that, for other companies also, for the retention framework. Now, retention is nothing but a kind of, in common parlance, what you call churn analytics. Now things are pretty standard, right? If you go to any analytics guy, analytics company, data scientist, churn analytics, oh, very simple. Churn not churn is binary dependent variable, and I have got several independent variables. So I shall develop a model around it. A kind of, it can be a logistic regression, or if the student is more educated, they will say discriminant analysis. If it's further educated, they will say extreme gradient boosting, or any kind of classification model for that matter. Right? That's the kind of standard answer. Am I clear? You all know these techniques, right? This is the kind of when you have a binary dependent variable, and churn means a binary dependent variable. Churn or not?
Yeah.
Customer has left or not?
Yeah.
Am I making sense to all of you? Any questions so far?
Sir, I think competition is quite important in CLTV. So how are you going to analyze the loss of your?
Let's not go to CLTV now. I'm not discussing CLTV at all at this point. I am discussing right now, in the context of the question what Professor asked about the solution framework, how to develop a solution framework. CLTV is a small part to it. We will discuss CLTV. We'll come back to CLTV. For the time being, let's understand how to design a solution, how to create a solution architecture. So was my premise clear to you? Any question on the premise? The premise is that suppose a chart analysis problem is given to us, to a cook in my language, or to any data scientist, to analytics company or analytics guy. They will develop a kind of, they know that churn is a kind of dependent variable, sorry, binary dependent variable. With a churn, the customer has left or customer is still there. And then the customer has got several variables. Variables can be the customer demographics, variables can be the customer interaction with the company, like that, correct? And then simplistic model can be logistic regression with a binary dependent variable, or discriminant analysis, or any of this kind of modeling technique they will give, right? Extreme gradient boosting, any kind of classification model. Does that make sense? Till now, what I have said, is it clear?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now there lies the problem. There lies the problem. Things are not that simplistic, and that's exactly the kind of cookie cutter job these analytics guys are doing, because they're not bringing their creativity. Bringing the creativity in where? Bringing the creativity in developing a solution framework, developing a solution design, solution architecture. And here in this slide, I'm going to tell you that how to develop a solution design or solution framework. So the first step is to predict churn, risk, and time. What does that mean? Which customers will churn, when, why? And then by that, what you are going to get? Customers with high flight risk at specific time points. That's what you are going to get. Say, for instance, you have applied any of those modeling techniques that I have told you right now, any of the classification models, you will get the customers with high flight risk at specific time points. Yes, these customers have got a very high probability of leaving the organization. But that's the kind of necessary but not sufficient for any company, right? Because if they just get a list of the customers who have got a high flight risk, not all high flight risk customers are worth retaining. Am I correct? Does that make sense? So if you just spend all your marketing dollars on retaining all the customers with high flight risk, then you are wasting your marketing dollars. Not all high flight risk customers are worth retaining.
Yeah.
Then you use this construct CLTV, which I shall discuss how to do it, all those stuffs which will come. But that's a kind of small part in the larger scheme of the things. Now say you found out the CLTV of all the customers who have got high flight risk from the step 1. So your question was that, business question was that, which customers are worth retaining. So you got the precise list of customers who have high flight risk and high CLTV from step 2 you have got. Now the thing is that not all high flight risk and high CLTV customers are worth targeting, because some won't return despite promotion. So you again create a step 3 where you will predict the propensity of response to promotions, which customer decisions can be prevented. That means you will come out finally with a precise list of customers who have high flight risk and high CLTV and high to moderate probability of response to promotions. Then only you can, it makes sense. It makes business sense for you to target those customers. Now there lies, now you understand the getting a feel of what is the kind of solution design. This is a kind of solution design, not about CLTV. CLTV is a small part to it. This is a solution design for a kind of churn analytics. But if you just throw a model, you have developed a model, logistic regression, discriminant, any of the classification, deep learning techniques, I have used DL. So I have come out with a kind of solution design, doesn't matter. And please understand that in this slide, nowhere I have mentioned about any of the modeling techniques. And for your information, this solution framework will not have any modeling technique. And for every step, you have got multiple modeling techniques. Predict churn risk and time. Don't think that I'm going to use actually one model. Multiple models will be there. Predict propensity to response to promotions. Multiple models will be there. So models will come at a later stage. Analytics will come at a later stage. First thing is that business thinking. As I always say that, statistics will follow the business. Analytics will follow the business, not the other way around. So that's the kind of, business logic you have to develop. And then you have to mathematically translate. And as I mentioned, that mathematical translation should not be into one mathematical model. Every step, I don't know, I have not shown it in, because this is not a kind of slide for or a class for churn. Let me see if I can find any retention or churn retention. If I can find, I can show you.
I have a question, Tuhin, but
Yes,
I will
please.
park it aside right now.
Okay.
And basically, taking what Ravindranath was asking a couple of minutes back, but I'll keep it aside, maybe at the end of it, it might be relevant. Which
You're
is
talking about the
basically,
CLTV question, right?
yeah.
We'll come to CLTV. We'll come to CLTV.
Based on the
Okay.
slide that is right now on the screen visible to us.
But then
and
you
also,
can ask me now. You can ask me now. That's
I'll
fine.
wait, maybe let's, because this is something which might be.
Sure. Now, see, guys, now the thing is that even for the step 1, because this is a slide for the retention analytics, I'm not supposed to discuss. That was not planned, but since I was discussing the solution design, let me show you. Suppose the step 1, what was the step 1 here? If you just for the recapitulation, step 1 was predict churn risk and time. That was the step 1, right? Now for the step 1 only, there can be 3 approaches. I'm not talking anything about modeling as of now. Even for the step 1, even for the first step, there can be 3 approaches. What can the 3 approaches? First is the churn profile in non-churn database. That means you have got the existing customers and you have also the customers who has left you. Customers who have left you have keep emitting signals. Suppose you can think of an employee also, employee who is about to leave the organization, start getting less engaged, and so on and so forth. So they keep emitting the signals. So are you finding similar signals in your existing customer database? That's approach 1. Even for the first step, please remember, I'm not talking about step 2, step 3. For the first step, approach 1. For the first step, approach 2 is churn scoring. And for the first step, approach 3 is predict the churn time. And for each of these approaches, I have got multiple modeling technique. So that's the kind of depth you are supposed to bring to your analytics solution. And even if I say deep learning solutions suite, I don't know whether I have shown it here or not. No, I have not shown it here. There is a plethora of deep learning technique that actually goes here. So yeah, point is not to confuse you. Point is that I'm just giving you an example of solution design, solution framework, and how unique that can be. And there lies your creativity. Any questions so far? This is a pretty important concept. Every analytics student should start developing his own solution to any given problem.
Have you changed your slide?
Sure. You're talking about coming back here, right?
I think the other slide was not visible to us.
Sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. Actually, I was sharing. You could have told me earlier. I'm so sorry for that. I was supposed to show you when I shared my screen. I was supposed to show you only the. I'm so sorry for that. I'm so sorry for that. Is it visible now?
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me explain it once again. Otherwise, things become very abstract for you. Okay, so now let me come back here. Let me do this, tweak between these two slides. So this was the step one, predict chart risk and time. You remember this thing, right?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So what I was saying is that even for the first step, I have got three approaches, not the modeling technique. Modeling technique will come at a much later stage. Even for the first step, I have got three approaches. Approach one is the Chartner profile in non-chart database. What does that mean? That the customers who tend to leave the organization or the employees who tend to leave the organization, they keep emitting very unique signals. So you have to capture the signals that's already been captured, and can you feel similar signals in your existing employees or existing customer database? That's a Chartner profile in non-chart or existing customer database. That is the approach one of the first step, mind it. Then in the approach two of the first step is the chart scoring, the probability of a customer leaving. What is probability? High probability, low probability, within high, low, what exactly is the probability? 0.736 or 0.659, whatever. Approach three is the predict churn time, when the customer is going to leave to you. In the next 3 months, Mr. X is going to, the probability of Mr. X leaving my organization in the next 3 months is 0.8. The probability of Miss Y leaving the organization or leaving my customer database in the next 6 months is 0.7. That's the kind of predict churn time. The point is now for every approach there is a certain modeling technique or techniques. Even here also there are many. I just cut it short to keep it simple. Because K-near is never the simplest one. Now the thing is that look at the depth that I am bringing on the table, and that's what is been deeply valued. So even for a solution framework, even for step one, there are 3 approaches, and each of the approach has got multiple modeling technique. So that's the kind of breadth and depth your solution design should have. This is the breadth and this is the depth. Am I making sense? Any questions so far? This is a very, very, very important thing.
Sir, can you just come to that framework slide? The
Sure.
other.
Yeah.
So this this looks to be in a flow, so very sequential in nature. What if in any step we find that this step is not required in this entire chain? So is
Don't
there
do
any
it.
backtracking?
I told you it is not sacrosanct. This is not sacrosanct. Not you have to
So,
follow this only.
So sir, is there any backtracking way in which we can go back and make some changes to the entire framework? Because that's not visible here.
Absolutely. So for instance, if this piece is not required, don't do it. If this piece is not required, or you need to incorporate some other pieces to the puzzle, incorporate it. That's exactly what I want to mean. It is absolutely your game. You need to create this framework. You need to create this solution design, and that's been extremely valuable. I'm sure you know the solution architect positions, right? Every company in the IT as well as in the analytics field, there is a kind of position of solution architect, and
Yes,
that's
sir.
their job, to design the solution. Getting the solution is a kind of pretty execution, no big deal. There are also challenges. I'm not saying it is not full of challenges, but this is something is the first step when you get a problem. Design a solution and let it be unique.
Say, for example, Rajiv and Tuhin both, I'm kind of, responding to that. Say, hotel industry versus an FMCG industry, the context of flow would be different.
Absolutely, 100%. Absolutely.
So, sir, just to add, sir, I think like what I understood is that basically our domain knowledge and business acumen is important in this particular stage, right?
True.
So this is where we can put our understanding into the picture.
Absolutely. That's why it is called business analytics. It's not a kind of, that's the difference between business analytics and data scientist. Precisely. That's why this business acumen will come. Business. So I'm sure you know. Have I shown you that steps of CRISP DM model? Have I shown you or not? Do you know the CRISP DM model?
No, you have not shown this, the CRISP DM model.
Let me Google it. It's not readily available, but let me Google it. You will find it. Yep. It's a pretty standard but old model. Though there are many variations to it, but this is something we all valued across. This is the full form also. Let me show you one. Let me come across the images and show you all. So this is the standard for the cross-industry process for data mining. It's the full form, but colloquially call it CRISP DM only. And let me show the images. You can see my screen, right?
You can click on this
Yes,
image,
sir.
I guess.
Okay, we want it to a larger. Sorry. Clearly visible, I guess, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So that's the first step. As I always say that don't ever jump to data preparation, modeling, wants to get any analytics assignment. Never jump here. Never ever jump here. That's suicidal. First 2 weeks, at least, I would say, at least, should be into immersing yourself into the business. Then the data understanding will come, and these two will go hand in hand. The more you will understand the business, the more you will question your data. Always question the data. That's a very important thing. Don't accept the data given to you. Never accept any data. Always question the data. Always question the data. That generates a lot of insight, extremely valuable insight, which otherwise you can never get if you just come here, data cleaning and then model development. So these two things will typically take easily anywhere between 2 weeks to 4 weeks for a serious project, for a really good project. As long as you know customer is not after you that you have to give the entire solution by 1 month, that's separate. But keeping all those things aside, for any standard, this requires anywhere between 2 weeks. 2 weeks to this much will take, and then another 1 week or 2 weeks, depending on the complexity of the data. Then all these things will come: data preparation, modeling, evaluation, deployment, and that's a kind of cycle. Yeah. So that's the kind of standard procedure across the industry. CRISP DM model. Any question?
No, sir.
Okay. Any question here?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay. So start developing your solution. That's the point. Start developing your solution. Start thinking like a business guy, and let statistics analytics follow that thought process, not the other way around. Since I know discriminant analysis, or since I know any of the deep learning technique, let me design my solution around that. That doesn't that is very clearly visible that there is not much thought around it. This guy just knows it, knows the tool and technique, and just trying to plug in that. That plugin process is not much value, rather disregarded across the industry. Anybody can plug in. If you know something, you're just plugging in. That's no big deal. Okay, let's come back where I left. Yeah. So I was here, and this is a kind of solution framework for this computing lifetime value, right? Again, as I mentioned, nothing sacrosanct about it. Nothing that no, this is fixed. This cannot be touched. This cannot be tweaked. This cannot be changed. Nothing like that. It's all your solution. The way you want to design it, the way you want to solve it, like a mathematical problem. There is no one way of solving a problem. There can be multiple ways, as many ways as you can see it. You solve it, take it. So yeah. So as I was saying that there was no futuristic angle to it. It was pretty descriptive, as Professor mentioned. So how can you bring a futuristic aspect to it, futuristic angle to it, to the problem of solution framework? So while I was thinking on that part, I was coming with this forecasting retention is a very important part. Forecasting customer behavior, that was nowhere mentioned there. That means what? So it has never been told that how the consumer behavior is going to change in future. Not only about this, one part is the revenue part. Of course, we will take care, but the overall behavior, everything gets changed right with time. The consumer behavior gets changed. That's not at all been tracked. Nothing is there. This is not even a kind of palatable one. This cannot be used. Okay. So forecasting customer behavior and then forecasting revenue. So this is the estimating the future value. If you want to add some 5 other things, add it. It's all your plate. That's my point. So if somebody was talking about competition, right? Now, if you want to add competition to it, do it. That's absolutely fine. Absolutely. Slate is completely blank. You were supposed to write it, paint it.
So, sir, when you're like designing these frameworks, first you look at the standard frameworks which are already there across the market, and then probably make some tweaks in terms of some blocks where you can either add or maybe you can modify them. Is that how it goes?
Not always. Had there been a kind of, say, for example, CLV, if you look at this construct, you won't find much standard things across the industry. Even for this construct, even for the retention one, the framework that I have shown you, you won't find it. You just Google it, search it, you won't find it. So most of the standard things that are available in the market are not that valuable, unfortunately, not that valuable. It's always better. And that's why, suppose a client pays you. Why will a client pay you? Unless they find something really unique, really valuable. You can take off my situation, right? Why will a company come to me when all the big guys are standing there, all the big companies are standing there, unless I bring something unique? Why will the company not go to IBM? Why will not go to any of the analytics companies or the IT companies, or even the even the consultancy companies, the McKinsey, BCG, and come to you or come to me? Unless you really bring out something unique. And there lies your creativity.
Sure, sir.
So you won't find the unique things in the standard things. Unique and standard are two extremes of a continuum. So you can find the standard things, but they won't be unique. Yeah, you are saying something. Sorry.
Yes, sir. So the unique part which you are talking about, there in any particular way in which the hypothesis we kind of make some hypothesis. So like what kind of hypothesis do we make when we are going for some new uncharted territory? So that's what I was just wondering about.
First of all, let me deliberate on this word hypothesis. Why is the hypothesis required? Just interact with me. I'm not questioning you, but just interacting with you. Why is the hypothesis required?
I believe, sir, to prove any particular claim that we are making, that this particular model is going to work or not. So essentially, a hypothesis might be a guiding way in which we'll be.
Dive further deep. That's pretty high level, 10,000 feet. Come down to 5,000 feet. Make it further granular, down to earth. Or let me answer in the interest of time. Yeah. See, first of all, in the AI ML analytics world, throw the word hypothesis. Throw out the word hypothesis completely out of the window. Let me tell you why. Unless you are using it in English parlance, if you are using it from statistical parlance, it's not required. Now let me tell you why. From a statistics perspective, English wise it is fine. Assumption is fine, but otherwise from statistics is not required. Let me tell you why. Hypothesis was typically required in our time when we used to do marketing research. Typically, some 20 years, 30 years back. At that time, it was required when we had to assume a fact about the population, and we used to collect data from a sample. Say the population size is 100. I'm just giving an example, and I have collected data about 30, and then I would need to infer a phenomena about my population. At that time, I need to create a hypothesis. But now, till now, it is fine. Is it fine till now?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Yeah. But in today's world, so what we used to do at that time, we used to literally go to the retail stores with a kind of marketing questionnaire, marketing research questionnaire. And we used to request them to fill up the form, or if they say we used to fill up the form like that. But nowadays, that's not required. You will get all the data, even if you don't have any high-end technologies, as I have shown you yesterday. But even if you don't have that, just from the POS, point of sales terminal only, you will have all the data of all the customers who are shopping from the store. So the entire, statistical realm of developing hypotheses, collecting the sample data, inferring whether the population holds true or not required. Those things are just not required, because right now you're working on the population data. Now, that was a statistical answer to the word hypothesis. If you use the word in a kind of English parlance, like what is the way whether the modeling will hold true or not, don't think about the modeling. I'm always saying, don't think at all about modeling. Forget about this part. Let me hide it. Just forget about this part.
So in terms of framework as well, like whether the framework is going to be.
Forget about this part. Just think of this part. Be as creative as possible. Someone was saying just 10 minutes, 20 minutes back, someone was saying in this class about the competition. Shouldn't it be a part? I have not considered, but you can always consider. Don't think about the analytics part here, modeling part here. That will come at a much later stage. And you can't go wrong, right? Suppose somebody is incorporating a new variable called competition analysis, that will either increase the value or will not increase. It will never deteriorate the quality of the model, incorporating new variables. That's good. Making sense what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
So don't think about I shall be wrong or what will happen. Nothing like that. As long as your business logic goes correct. And what you can do here is that to validate your business logic, you need not, that's very important. You need not do everything in an isolated compartment, in silo, nothing like that. That's where the first 2 weeks business understanding will go. So you present to the different board members, to the different C-suite members, hey man, I'm going to take these 5 ways of approaching the problem. Do you think these 5 are sufficient or should I incorporate something else? They will definitely tell you, because they are in the business for years, for decades. They will tell you, hey, you have missed this very important variable. Take this one. That's a good way. Forget about this part. That's why I made it not visible to you. So think about this part.
Got it, sir.
Any question, guys, so far about this solution designing part? That's something very critical. Don't just plug and play the models. That's something not regarded, not respected. Of course, that's required, but you have to go to the next level. And something which I have not shown here, I have not discussed here, because that's exactly or definitely beyond the scope of this class or any of the classes, is the solution design or architecture from a kind of IT perspective. Where your database will be stored. Say if I am working on a kind of qualitative data. So what kind of database will have? I cannot have a traditional SQL data. I should have MongoDB database. So what kind of database should I have? How the data will flow? What kind of API should be there? That IT part, again, you cannot be completely blind to it. You cannot afford to be blind to it. You should know that. You should have a reasonably good knowledge about how the data flows. Making sense, guys? So solution architecture, when I'm saying, I'm not talking about this part only. The other part is the IT part. That's again a very, very, very critical part.
Sure, sir. Got it.
Cool. So yeah, so forecasting retention is one thing. Forecasting customer behavior is a very important part, I believed, and the forecasting revenue was completely missing on those CLTV traditional way, which you will get by the any of the book or any of the internet sites. And then calculating the current value. This is what it was. Now customer retention, which just to make it simple, otherwise or ideally I should have done this elaborate framework that I have shown you. But just to keep it simple, if I take only survival analysis. By the way, are you acquainted with this technique, survival analysis, or should I give you a kind of brief about this technique? What is this, guy?
A brief is good, probably, because I don't think they might have done that in business.
Okay.
Have you done survival in business analytics, Rajiv?
No, sir.
No. So I think maybe you can give.
Yeah, sure. It's actually pretty simple. It was taken from a kind of a health concept, and then we can apply it in any context. From the health concept, in the sense that how long will a patient survive given a particular disease, especially when it's a kind of fatal disease. That was the kind of context it had. Now the thing is that we use this same concept about how long will an employee be with our organization, how long will a customer be with an organization, not only in the churn context, but also in the context of when will be the customer is going to make the next click, even in the click stream analysis. Even in the click stream analysis, we very much use it. In the digital analytics, we very much use it. When the customer is going to have this next click, or the customer is going to leave the customer journey or not. All those in many of the contexts we use it. But the thing is that now let me tell you about how the solution has been designed, how the data been designed here. This is, I guess, only there are two statistical techniques where more than one dependent variable are used. This is one of them. The other one is MANOVA. Keeping the MANOVA aside, rest all the statistical techniques, if I just consider myself in the realm of supervised learning, not in unsupervised like factor analysis, cluster analysis, where there is no dependent or kind of multidimensional scaling, where there are no dependent variable, independent variable, keeping those things aside. In all other techniques, say the regression, discriminant, logistic, so on and so forth, all the techniques, you will find there is only, even in the machine learning techniques, like extreme gradient boosting, bagging, you will find there is only ensembles, they will only find there is only one DV. Even in the deep learning techniques, you will find there is only one DV. Whereas survival analysis, again, I'm not discussing on MANOVA. Maybe I shall throw 1 minute on that. Survival analysis is one of the two techniques where you have got two dependent variables. So in the context of, and one of them has to be the time. One of them must be the time or the duration. So in the context of this chart, what can be the dependent variable? One is that the duration, how many months the customer was, or is both possible. If the customer left, then it was, or the customer exists till now, then it is with the organization. It can be 9 months, 13 months, 17 months, 21 months, 3 months, whatever. That's one column. The other column is that customer is with the organization or has left the organization. Customer is still there with the organization, 1 or 0. Am I making sense? Any questions so far?
No.
Okay, and independent variables will be the traditional IFs, like all your demographics, all the customer interaction variables. If it is a bank, then what kind of transactions the customer had, what kind of balance the customer had, customers taking any loan or not, if any loan from for which category, paid the interest rate or not. Lot of variables, hundreds of variables are that IV. IV will actually change from context to context, business to business. MANOVA is another variable. MANOVA is another technique which has got more than 1 dB. Very simple thing, like you must have done ANOVA in your childhood, where you have got few independent variables which are typically the nominal variables, whereas the dependent variable can be in the interval or ratio scale. Say for example, simple ANOVA can be color of the advertisements and the cells, right? So yeah, sales is the dependent variable, which is a ratio scale, and color of advertisement can be a nominal scale, red, blue, green. And if you make it a kind of slightly complex, the kind of factorial ANOVA, so what can happen is that with the color, you can make the, say in a print ad, if I take, in the print means a newspaper, magazine, size of the ad and the color of the ad. Size can be the small, medium, high, or large, small, medium, large size, and the color can be red, blue, green. And you can have a kind of factorial ANOVA with that. MANOVA is that instead of 1 dV like cells, you can have multiple dVs. Of course, there shouldn't be much correlation across the dVs. So typically in a consumer behavior scenario or in the advertisement scenario, it can be attention towards the ad, comprehension of the ad, maybe the purchase motivation towards the ad, retention of the ad, attitude towards the ad. So the 5 dependent variables you can have. And then you can have this kind of independent variables, and that's kind of MANOVA. Am I making sense? Am I clear? Any question? Was I clear or not? Tell me very frankly.
There's no questions, which means we are clear.
Okay. Okay. So survival analysis, what we have done is that we have got, as I mentioned, 2 columns will be there. One is about the duration, another one is about the customer has left or not left, binary ones. And you have got several independent variables. And then you can test or this kind of objectives like the retention rate for a segment of customers, or compare the retention rate between 2 or more segments, or assess the relationship of the co-variable to retention, such as the price increase, customer satisfaction, or inferior product quality influence retention. So these are the kind of questions you can answer. Once you will dive deep into further in the hazard function is a very important survival analysis. It's a kind of conditional probability that the event will occur, or the churn, event means your churn, will occur within a small time interval after T, given it has not occurred until T. So the customer has not left till now. So what is the probability of the customer leaving, say the month of February? What is the probability of my customer leaving by May? I can typically calculate it with conditional probability. Once you will dive further deep into survival analysis, though this is not the class 2 survival analysis, but it's important in the context. What I'm discussing now is that there are different types of survival analysis like exponential, Weibull, Cox regression, Kaplan-Meier, depending on the data, right? If it is kind of parametric estimate where hazard is constant over time, the conditional probability that I just mentioned, if that is constant over time, you will use exponential. If it is increasing or decreasing over time, then you will use the Weibull regression. If it is semi-parametric, it is neither parametric nor non-parametric, you will use the Cox regression. If it is a completely non-parametric, you will use the Kaplan-Meier. By the way, you all know how to test the parametric. What are the parametric tests? You know that thing, right? How will you test data is parametric or not?
They have done that in their.
Cool. So, very nice. Very nice. So yeah, I think that's something very basic. You should be all cognizant of, and then only you can take a call, right? Then only you can take a call that which particular way I should take. So 1 minute. I'm just trying to take this guy out.
Sir, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Can you go to previous slide?
Sure.
Sir, when you are doing survival analysis and you have identified when you are going to lose your customer.
Correct.
So my question is why we are not going with the scenario planning also. We are stucking at the step where we are doing predictive analytics, but we are not doing the prescriptive analytics, because my ultimate goal should be to reduce my customer retention. So I have identified all the variables and the connection between the customer retention and all the variables, but these variables are very dynamic and these will change according to my scenario. So the customer today might not be my customer tomorrow, even if I predict its survival analysis to be another 6 months. So it's a very uncertainty based model. So why not we are going with scenario planning also, wherein we identify if this customer, if we loses this customer even after we have identified 6 months of his survival. So what we are going to do next?
You can always go ahead. Absolutely fine. That's what I mentioned. So the slate is completely blank. It is for you. The board is all open for you. You draw it. You draw your solution design. Absolutely fine. Do it. Go ahead. Why not? Make it as robust as possible. Only catch is that in a practical scenario, the catch is not that I'm discouraging you. I'm actually encouraging you, but I'm just showing you what could be the constraint. The practical constraints are that every step of your solution design comes with a time and cost. That is the kind of the reality. So that's where the business guys will come and question you that, hey man, this step sounds very interesting. What's the time and cost to it? Then you will arrive to a time and cost. Then the business guy will calculate, hey, you can save me this much of cost, but then the cost of doing it is more than saving the cost. Then that doesn't make any sense. So I'm not discouraging you, by the way. I'm just stating you that what could be the possible questions and challenges when you come out with some kind of solution design. So always think in this way that, yeah, this looks very sexy, this looks very exciting, but does that make business sense? So whenever you will do actually along with this, along with all the kind of PPT or along with all the kind of solution framework, continuously what we do is a kind of resource planning. Resource planning, I'm sure I'm not going to, I can show it to you if required, but again, beyond the part view, but always start doing it because that's what you are going to do once you be in a managerial position. After the completion of the course, you have to do the resource planning. It's not just model development. How many resources? Because you will not alone will do it, right? If you're kind of manager, your entire team will do. How many resources would you require at what cost, and then what kind of skill levels, how many hours, and then the different pricing model. That's another very important thing. I find most of the analytics students in many of the B schools have interacted. They don't have any clue. What are the pricing models with which analytics work? So you have to be cognizant of that. If you're going to speak with your client, obviously the client will ask about the cost, because client bothers about not only the solution but the cost. So what will be the pricing model? Is it a fixed cost model or the T&M method or any other kind of outcome oriented or output oriented? How are you going to make your, or it's a kind of hybrid model? A part would be T&M and part would be outcome oriented. So pricing of the analytics project is a very critical thing if also be cognizant. So these are all the business aspects to the analytics. So statistics is only one part of it. There are a lot of business to it. So learn that as well.
Especially for a market like India, which is still getting used to the data part of it, maybe pricing is all the more critical.
Very critical, very critical, very critical. And even if you're dealing with US client, they have a kind of thought process that India means so cheap, we'll get very cheap labor. So they will start squeezing you more. So yeah, how to play it, how to. Business is something I don't know whether it can actually be taught in any B school or not. I'm very sorry I'm making this.
No, that's a fact. It's more an instinct that comes in.
Yeah, instinct, experience. Once you are in the business, then you will learn. We can all teach you about this, modeling technique, all this grammar. But then the business literature is more than the grammar, right? That's what I exactly meant. So yeah, business is more than this grammar of what are the different nuances of marketing, nuances of finance. Business is something more than that, more than just grammar. But be cognizant, there is a huge or larger world of business beyond what the grammar you are learning here. And how can we learn now? If that's the kind of question you ask, Suppose I just threw this question and you came out with the answer, why not scenario planning? That's a good question. I appreciate that. Now, suppose, assume that I am the kind of, your client. I'm asking, hey, what is the cost of doing a scenario planning? So your job would be, you come out with a kind of resource planning. You come out with your total time and cost to it. And then you can come out with a budget. Hey, man, to accomplish, to add this step, this is the kind of cost I'm coming. So that's the kind of, business answer. Business answer is not English. It is all about with your Excel sheet. The numbers will speak. So come out with that. That's how you will learn. The more you will create this kind of proposals, techno-commercial proposal that we say. Technical part is this part, what you get in the slide. And then there is a commercial part to it, techno-commercial proposal. So start developing the proposal, get yourself be challenged by the business guys, and they will then learn how to come out with it. Come out with a sound plan. It will be bulletproof actually. Nobody can question. Any other observations, questions, thought process before I move?
Yeah, sir. From the previous slide that you have shown, where you have shown the solution architecture. Yes, sir. This slide. So here, from the looks of it, most of the models are static models, right?
No, not right.
Okay, so these are continuous learning models?
Yeah. Let me tell you how. Say, for instance, look at this slide. Sorry, I cannot show you the heading. I don't know how to move this top heading bar. Anyway, heading is forecasting consumer behavior. That was the heading. So yeah. So this part is continuous, right? Sorry, this part is static. This is the kind of descriptive K-means clustering. You are doing kind of segmentation. Now, what I am doing is that the result of this cluster analysis will be taken forward by Markov chain to forecast that what would be the next step of the consumer behavior. The same thing for survivor analysis. Don't think it is descriptive. I can pretty well predict what is the probability of customer X leaving my organization in the next 3 months. Precise probability I can calibrate. I can figure that out. So these are all futuristic. This is the step 2, and let me tell you the step 3. This is the revenue forecasting. Even that one is, which I'm going to discuss. Anyway, I'm keeping a pause. But my point is that even that is also futuristic. So if your question was that if it is static, historic, no. This is dynamic. Why dynamic? First of all, futuristic and dynamic, these two words are different. Dynamic, we always make every model dynamic. How? We create data pipeline, kind of technical term, but you must be acquainted with this term. Yeah, we always create data pipeline. Data will continuously keep flowing into your model, and depending on the business scenario that you have to ask your business that, because there is a cost to it. There is a cost to model refresh, quote unquote. Remember this word as well. There is a cost to model refresh. So how frequently they want to refresh the model? 15 days, 1 month, per quarter, per 6 months, depending on the business, because there's a cost to it and you will charge. It can be 30% of the model development or 50% model development, depending on a lot of different aspects. So that makes the model dynamic when there is a kind of continuous data flow to the model. Either the model can be on a real-time basis, continuously it will give you continuously model will run and continuously model will throw the recent output, or it will refresh at a kind of pre-scheduled or predefined interval, 1 week, weekly, bi-weekly, whatever. So yeah, that makes the model dynamic. Question answer number 1. Answer number 2 is that it is all futuristic, because be it survival, be it your taking cluster analysis through a Markov chain, or the revenue projection, this all makes it futuristic.
Got it, sir.
Cool. Okay. So let's move to the revenue forecasting part. How can I remove this heading? Any idea? Can you guys see this heading, or this heading is not shown to you?
New forecasting we can see.
Okay. Anyway, okay. So again, a very important part I'm going to discuss here. Intentionally, I could have used forecasting. I could have shown you any of the traditional techniques like ARIMA model, GARCH model, which in the prehistoric age or pre-independence era, it was been used to forecast GDP and so on and so forth. Things have moved, of course, that I have shown you already. Somebody was asking the question day before yesterday. I have shown you how it has moved from classical statistics to machine learning, from machine learning to deep learning. That's not the point to show it here or repeat that here. Point is something else. Point is here is that how you can even, so first level of solution design is at the business level that I have shown you here. That was more of a kind of answering the business question. Here, what I'm going to show you in the next few slides, even if you name or even if you're going to apply one model, say LSTM I have used here, long short-term memory, is a type of deep learning technique or is a type of recurrent neural network, which is a type of deep learning technique. How even you can create your own architecture of the modeling. That's what I want to mean. Now, what do I mean by that? What is the modeling architecture? Now, that was the kind of business level solution. Now I'm diving deep into the model development architecture. And there is a third stage, which I'm not discussing in this class, is a kind of data architecture, data flow. So that's again something you should be very well cognizant of. Okay, so this is what exactly I have shown you, like a few slabs are stacked one upon the other. Similarly, multiple LSTM layers you can actually stack one above the other. What is LSTM? Perhaps not known to you, and I'm not going into deep to it. Just to make the matter simple, LSTM is very unique. Unique in the sense that it has got a forget gate. That means it knows pretty well that if a new information comes, what is the value of the new information? And depending on that, so typically all the models whatsoever we have, we gave equal weightage to all the new data that comes to the model, right? That's typical way, input data. But then it comes with a kind of contextual knowledge, and then assign weights, and then certain input data are thrown to the forget gate, and certain input data are given more weightage given the context. So that's why LSTM is widely used in today's world. Perhaps the most popular among all the deep learning techniques. Anyway, that's not the point of discourse here. I'm not going to discuss what is LSTM, but I'm going to show you the modeling architecture. So what happens here is that I have shown you the kind of stacked LSTM, or what happens is that after the input layer, there are two LSTM layers are kind of stacked one after the other, so that output of one becomes the input of the other. So that's the kind of Can you see this heading or not?
I can see it. Multivariable stacked long-term short-term memory.
Okay. So it is on my side only. I cannot see. For me, that is a kind of zoom heading that blocks this heading. Okay, that's good that you can see. It is fine. Okay. So that's how you can stack the different modeling techniques, different models. I have shown you here one type of models, how they are being stacked. There is a reason to it. I will come to it later. But even you can make your own modeling architecture in the sense that different kind of models, say the previous one, how the cluster analysis results will be taken forward by the Markov chain. For one Southeast Asian bank, almost a few years back, I did for them. They gave me a unique problem. Again, slightly I'm digressing in this context, though. They gave me I was doing a kind of market segmentation for them. So yeah, I did several segmentation exercises. One of them was cluster analysis. They said that very nice. This looks damn good, but this is all for your existing customer. How will you segment for a new customer? And the problem is that you cannot just give the answer that the new customer data will flow in the model. Why you cannot give the answer? Because for the entire segmentation of a bank, a major chunk of the data was the customer's transactions with the bank. Now, none of the transactional data is available for a new customer, right? So you cannot just let the data flow and the model will refresh and you will get the result. No, that will not work. So what we did, something very interesting, new customers through a KYC form, they can get the demographics data. Now I have got the segments, say I have got say 5 or 6 segments. And then each of these segments become the levels of a decision tree.
When we lost you.
Oh, sorry.
We lost you.
From?
We lost you where you said that, the bank said that what happens to our existing customers.
Okay, right. No. Rather the opposite. The bank said that what happens to the new customer, because
new customer, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, Segmentex says we have done for the existing customers. What can we do for the new customers? And interestingly, it's not just like we can, incorporate the new customers data into the model and the model will refresh by itself. That's not possible. Why it's not possible? Because the majority of the data or the variables were the transactional data for the existing customer. So we cannot have transactional data for new customers, right? So that was never possible. So what happened is that, but the bank had the KYC form, right? KYC form had got the demographics of the new customers. So what we did was that the segments we have already done. So we have got say 5 or 6 segments we have come out with, and we have got the demographics of the new customers. So we created a decision tree. In a decision tree, the dependent variable has got 5 or 6 levels. It's not the 5 or 6 variables. The same variable has got like the color. Color is a variable. It has got red, blue, green as the levels. Similarly, there are 6 segments can be the 6 levels of one dependent variable. And then the independent variables are the demographics. And then we came out with a decision tree through which you can figure out the probability of customer X, even if it's new, of falling into segment 3 is 80% or 85%, depending on the decision rule. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
So that's how you can create the hybrid models. It's very important. In current business scenario, the kind of problems that you are going to get, don't think that you can just plug and play a problem and then there is a solution. How you can create a kind of robust architecture of solution. And so that one modeling technique will talk to the other, one output will become the input of the other. That's how things really move in today's world. So same here, you have seen the multivariable MLS TLM. Now this is the kind of architecture of bidirectional LSTM. Not that you have to literally master. My objective is here not to master even LSTM. My objective here is to show you how the architectures become complex and you can start designing your own architecture, not LSTM. That is kind of, a kind of contextual knowledge, but that's not where my focus is. My focus is to give you a kind of idea that how you can design your own architecture. So bidirectional means that there is backward as well as there is forward. And from xt-1, how you are predicting the yt-1. From xt, you are predicting the yt. From xt+1, you are predicting the yt+1. So that's how the final output of LSTM layer should be a vector of all the outputs represented by the yt. So that's how things actually move. Now things get further complex. So when I am having the stacked bidirectional and unidirectional LSTM, so that is called the SBU, stacked bidirectional SBU. So you have got this is the unidirectional LSTM, you have got the bidirectional LSTM, and this is the kind of complete architecture. So yeah, so that I have shown you just by one modeling technique LSTM. But the point here is that even a single modeling technique, you can use it in such a creative way. Think about how you can be creative. So again, now you see how I'm shifting the gear. So the first half an hour of this class, I was into the designing of what? Of a kind of business solution. Nowhere a modeling technique was mentioned in this slide. Nowhere. Whereas now once you are diving deep at creating the depth of your solution design, this is the kind of depth you are supposed to bring. So think about it and start developing your own solution design or architecture. Any questions so far? Not on the LSTM. I know that is something unknown to you. I'm not here to teach you LSTM, but I'm giving you a kind of overall idea about how to design your solution architecture. Any question on that?
So while that segmentation, how good a variable demographic of only taking demographics is?
The question is not clear. One second. How will a demographics?
In the earlier slide, when you moved from cluster to Markov, I think that's what
Correct.
Rajiv is saying.
That one, or you are talking about the example that I have shared?
Example.
Example, okay. Tell me the question once again.
So essentially for new customers, how good a variable only demographics is?
Still the question is not clear. How will the, can you frame the questions once again for my benefit?
What Rajiv is trying to ask is that when you are looking at the new customer, right? Because the client said that what happens to the new customer. So what you did was you took demographics. Whereas in the earlier case, in your existing customer, you had used usage data, right?
Correct.
To segment.
Correct.
So now Rajiv is asking that, does it make sense to only actually go back and just look at the demographic data?
What options do you have?
Yeah.
You don't have any other options.
Rajiv, is that what you're asking?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay,
so,
let me give a quick answer to it. First of all, what options do you have? You don't have any other options. So that's the kind of tight situation you are in. You have got only demographics data. You don't have any other thing. Challenge is that even with that, there is, and by the way, the reality is that you will always have paucity of data. You will always have scarcity of data. The point is that how even with the paucity of data, you can come out with a solution. So let me answer that with the kind of this is all realistic. This is all the kind of use case that I have done for a guy based out of Southeast Asia. Guy means the kind of bank, a leading bank in Southeast Asia. So the first is the first macro segment, second macro segment, and third one was homogeneous. So first macro segment has got 3 micro, second macro has got 2 micro, and this one was homogeneous. So I have got total 3 plus 2, 5 plus 1, 6. 6 segments I have got. Anyway, I'm not going to details here. This is how in Tableau we show. We don't give the kind of, though in the bank I worked on SAS, because bank don't work in the open source like R, Python, Scala. They work in SAS. Most of the banks, even in India or outside as well, they work SAS. But then I cannot give the SAS results. That has to be a front-ended with Tableau. So this is the kind of, which shows the kind of, how the segments behave, these 3 macro, and then within the macro, how the first macros, 3 micros work. Profiling, this is typically called the customer profiling. The second macro has got 2 micro within it. Whatever, not going to that. Now that's the kind of segment new customers you were talking about. What I did was that, these are the 3 plus 2 plus 1, 6 segments. I have got only the demographics data. And so these are all indicative rules though. If income is between say 2 million to 5.12 million and age is between 27 to 31, then the probability of a customer moving to this micro segment is say a given percent, say 85% or 90%, whatever. So you must be knowing that decision trees through the decision rules. It kind of creates a lot of rules. So we create the top 10 rules or top 5 rules, whatever, again, that you can choose, that which particular rules you can choose. And then accordingly, you can, based on the rules, you can come out with a solution. Yeah, if the new customer falls into this bracket. Again, I have just shown you 2 variables here, income and age. Actually, demographics have got so many other variables, but it's only for the representative purpose, not for a kind of. Is my screen visible, by the way?
Yes, sir.
Okay, because last time it was my bad. Yeah. So any question?
Got it, sir.
Cool. So let me come back where I left. So yeah, guys, point here is that develop your own solution design, be it at the business level, that is the breadth, and this is the kind of depth that any business will expect from you. So these are historical CLV prediction and predictive CLV is a pretty standard formula. I'm not going to these details. And then there is the customer modeling. Now in the last 15 minutes, let's study the use case. This is case for the automotive industry, and before going to the CLTV, it's very important to understand the customer journey mapping. That's very critical. Just give me 1 minute. Let me. No, that will not help. Okay. Yeah. So what will happen first is the awareness, then the consideration. The customer is considering to buy, then the customer visits the showroom, then the purchase takes place, then there is driving experience, and then the post-sale service with after sales and repurchase. And these are the kind of touch points for the company. Here it is through mass media. This particular consideration, visit the showroom through the lead management phase, then the post-sale service, the driving experience after sales, the post-sale service, and finally the customer loyalty. The question is how we can take it forward. So it happens with the customer engagement, relationship with the dealer. Customer feels a strong sense of loyalty to the dealership, and customer into the same dealership again and again for their customer purchase. So that's how the CLV gets started. Customer lifetime value gets generated. So what are the key questions to calculate CLV? What is the current value of recent customers? What is the future value of this? There are only two components, right? And from there, if you remember, my solution design comes from this particular thought process. What is the current value? What is the future value? And for the future value, I require these answers. Like how long will the customer remain with the company? From the survival analysis, I can find that out. How would be the possible behavior of customers during the lifetime? That also I can figure out when I am just juxtaposing Markov chain with the cluster. And how much is the revenue customers during the lifetime through the revenue analysis projection? This is the questions. So these are kind of representative variables I can take, like distance traveled on vehicle, vehicle age, average vehicle displacement, referral number, total cost, average cost. And the marketing questions, product question, customer support questions, sales questions could be like how much should I spend to acquire a customer? How can I offer products and service tailored for my best customers? How much should I spend? So these are kind of typical critical questions for the business. This is what I've already shown to you. The applications of CLV, what kind of further calculations and further insights you can generate from your business, like identify right acquisition channel to invest in. Again, a very important thing, you shouldn't use the same acquisition channel for all the customer. So depending on so what happens is that before I go here, a very important part is that segment customer basis the score, basis on the CLV score, and define the level of customer loyalty. So again, you must be knowing about all those, what you call gold, iron, lead, all these kind of typically we call the segments. The different segments are there, and every segment needs to be treated differently. Their customer, their acquisition, their treatment, their loyalty, the benefits, the revenue, the cost, everything will be very different. To identify right acquisition channel to invest in, it is one thing. And the fine-tuning the service center and dealer location, fix the merchandising strategy, build loyalty program, and optimize servicing strategy. So that's how you do. You will treat the multiple segments that you will come across through the CLV. And identify optimal combination of the store location merchandising, precise customer lifetime values, which you have the store location, merchandise strategy, service center, aggregate level, you do it. And the segment currently valuable customers, identify who are likely to become more valuable, that you segment. And how that helps, that's a very important part. So typically high lead generation happens whenever how to identify right acquisition channels to invest in. So high lead generation, but low conversion rate, that will take place because there is only one customer will have a high dollar value. But if you take a kind of CLV route that attributes response or purchase to your collective channel network, then you will have, you know exactly your conversion rate will be very high. That's the beauty. So you have got all the customers with a future value. So you have got more customers with dollar value. So the high conversion rates takes place. Any questions so far? Any questions so far?
I think we are fine. Let's move.
Okay. Now, building a successful loyalty program through the CLV. CLV is the foundation. So the point here is that, see, CLV plays many critical roles. So you can, if you look at this slide, CLTV, even in the retention, CLTV plays a small part. Or if somebody wants just CLTV, we don't give just the CLTV, but several answers to it. So again, your business acumen will come here, not the statistics or analytics. That from this construct, what else are related, and how we can give solutions to the, say, the building the loyalty program, or identify the right acquisition channel out of the CLV. Similarly, how we can this CLV helps to identifying the futuristic customers with high dollar value. That's the that's again a very important thing, and that's why it is important, because idea is, when you are in business, the idea is always the growth, how to expand the business. So if you get a kind of business of CLTV, how you can expand the business. Suppose if you are throwing some 5 other solutions, then your business will increase, right? So that's a very important part. And every solution, though the mother of the solution lies in CLV, but then you have to tweak the solutions, you have to do some additional work, and then that's the kind of business that you can show to your client that yes, I can bring this value to you, that the lead generation would improve by CLV, and then let me handle your lead gen exercise as well. And this is the kind of value I'm going to give to you vis-a-vis the one that you are currently doing. Client will be excited if you can really show the dollar value to them, and your business will grow. So again, what is the takeaway from this last 2-3 minutes? Takeaway is that what is given to you, what the business you have got, that is only the starting point. That's only the starting point. The intelligent mind will always think that yes, what else I can do, how I can add more value to the client so that I can gain some more business. And that's tremendously valued if you work for any organization or even for yourself, whatever. Because if you are developing the business, that's precisely what is the meaning of the word business development. Business development is not just sales. Business development is not just cold calls. This is what business development is, especially in terms of analytics. From CLV, you can move to 5 other things, and that's how you are developing the business. From a few $1,000 account, you can move to $1 million account. The same account can be moved to $1 million account. Making sense? Am I making sense to you guys?
Yeah.
Okay. So you are building a successful loyalty program. Very, very, very critical. Again, CLV Foundation is the heart of it. That's the mitochondria. Customer modeling, analyze customers' repurchase history, leverage capabilities such as increased rewards for high margin products, personalized post-purchase enrollment offers, a status tier, a triggered email campaigns, and maximize customer lifetime value. That's how that serves a kind of dual purpose. One is that customer loyalty increases, customer lifetime value increases, your business develops. The other thing is that whenever you are doing this personalized post-purchase enrollment offer, status tier, the customer feels very special. And when the customers feel special, the other thing what grows is the kind of net promoter score, NPS. The referral recommendation that goes very high. So we're also getting new customers through this channel. So these concepts are intertwined. So if you just pull one of the strings, the other strings will also resonate. So that's very important for you, how you can statistically capture the resonance of the other constructs, other business constructs, which are very closely related to it. Am I making sense, guys? Is all right?
Yes,
Any
sir.
questions? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So how do we decide on the kind of loyalty program that we want for our organization?
That's more of a marketing question. That's not exactly a kind of analytics will answer it. Analytics will tell you, boss, these are the 5 segments I can clearly see, or even 5 or 50. That also analytics doesn't decide. Analytics may ask you, hey, these are the kind of CLV I have got. I have got the CLV of all the customers. Do you want me to segment as per the CLV numbers, or is there any other strategy you want to filter it? That's simple filtering, but that's no big deal. So let the marketing policy or marketing strategy decide it. Similarly, what kind of loyalty program you are going to decide. That the marketing strategy will decide, marketing policy will decide. He will tell you, boss, these are the kind of criteria for each of these segments. This is how this segment look like with this CLV. This is their characters, this is their profiling. How would you like to take it forward? Your call. That's where the marketing guy will come, step in.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. So that's something, again, very interesting thing that, that business and analytics will work hand in hand. At one point, analytics will give all the information, and then the business guy will step in and take the information, create the business strategy. It can be the marketing strategy, any of the strategy, supply chain strategy. Yeah. So yeah, it helps again in the cross-sell, upsell, because given on the CLV, it directly contributes, right? If you increase the cross-sell, upsell part, the CLV will increase. It actually works in a kind of circular fashion. The more the cross-sell, upsell will grow, kind of virtuous cycle, of course, the more the CLV will increase, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's how it goes. This is the CLTV for the customer-centric organization. It will acquire, help the higher value customers, secure future VIPs, practice value-tied segmentation, find your weak point, then strengthen it, and measure your ad performance. Again, a very important part. Even ad is related. Which ad was more effective in engaging multiple purchasers? So, not that as you mentioned about the different strategies, different segments. Not that every segment is going to consume same type of ad from the same channel. So what particular promotional message would be more interesting to what particular CLV group? So when I'm saying segment, I'm talking about a CLV segment. Yeah. So that's all. So last couple of minutes, questions, please. You can even ask me the question beyond CLV, because this is my last class with you. So any questions on analytics as a whole, or your career, whatever, or on CLV, your call. Last 2 minutes.
Any questions, guys?
I found something. Somebody mentioned something in the chat. To confirm statistical significance of the implementation.
Oh, that was when you were in that.
Okay, sorry.
That was way back.
Okay.
Vishnu.
No, sir, not as such. Sir was very much descriptive about everything.
Shobit.
So guys, let me tell you my last 2 cents. The last minute is that what you are currently learning is all important. All the modeling techniques, all this yarn, all this knowledge of state churn, all the different business concepts, statistics, analytics is all fine. But what I primarily see is missing in many of the pass out B-School guys is that is amalgamation of this concept in a business sense. That's something very, very, very critical. So my suggestion is that if possible, speak with the guys. If you want to create a career in analytics, speak with the guys who are into the analytics field, who are currently working. And then analytics has got several fields. Analytics is not one thing. It's say the pre-sales team is a separate team altogether. Delivery team is a separate team altogether. So first thing, that where you want to land up, there are several teams within analytics itself. You want to be a pre-sales guy, then the kind of skills you require is slightly different from the delivery guy. If you are into delivery, then your skills will be very different from a pre-sales guy. So think about it and sharpen your skills accordingly, because if you don't see that where you want to be in analytics, then again you cannot groom yourself. That's the problem. Then when we take you or any organizations take you, you also get confused, and the organization also get confused where to take this guy. So think about it. Okay, the simple difference between the pre-sales and the delivery guy. A delivery guy should have a more thorough knowledge about statistics, analytics, algorithms, because they will literally do it. They will be hands-on. Whereas a pre-sales guy would be more into, what I was talking about, the solution design, the resource planning, speaking with the client, customer, more of a business savvy guy. So think in this way. I'm not saying that there are only two departments, there are multiple departments. So thinking that way, that where do you want to really land up, and accordingly groom your skill. Otherwise, it will be a kind of generalized analytics person, which becomes very difficult for you to land up in your dream job. Am I making sense?
Yeah, I think.
Yes, sir, completely.
Cool.
Thanks, Tohin. I think.
My pleasure.
It's
My pleasure.
It's been a very enriching experience for all of us.
Yeah.
Look forward to connecting you. Yeah. Look forward to connecting you with you.
Sure. Have a wonderful Monday.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Same to you.